Sometimes when students get involved in evangelism, they can get discouraged if they don't see immediate fruit or immediate response from their efforts. And if you've worked really hard to organise, say, a whole week of mission events, and then you don't see people coming to Christ straight away, it can make you question whether it really is worthwhile. I guess one of the things that's helpful to remember in that setting is that actually our efforts are worthwhile. That wonderful chapter on the resurrection in 1 Corinthians 15 tells us that our labour in the Lord is not in vain, and that we need to be steadfast and unmovable. Or think of Galatians 6:9, where it says we shouldn't become weary in doing good, for if we don't give up at the proper time, we'll reap a harvest. So I'd say the biblical principle is we press on and persevere in spite of the fact that sometimes we might be discouraged by the outward response. And we remember, of course, that only eternity reveals the full extent of what the Lord has done through a week of mission or through an evangelistic venture. But at the same time, what we've noticed is that if students don't give up and they persevere, then in time they do start to see something of the fruit as well. So, for instance, even if a mission week hasn't resulted in people coming to faith, it's probably resulted in at least a renewed interest or a new interest in the Christian faith amongst some students that they haven't had before. Now, if Christians are equipped to be able to follow up that interest, to do seeker Bible studies, maybe to invite them to some kind of evangelistic course, then the likelihood is that some of those students will come to faith, not necessarily immediately, but in the weeks and months that follow, and they'll see the impact of that. And the other thing that we like to encourage people to do is to say, even if your first venture in evangelism isn't as fruitful as you would like it to be, don't give up, just do it again. And I've worked in some groups that have done missions over the course of 2, 3, 4 years. And it wasn't the first year that saw the most impact. It was actually the third or fourth year where they had learnt from their experiences. They had honed the model of what they were doing. They had found a model that was far more culturally appropriate and effective. And they were starting to see fruits come from that. So if at first you don't succeed, the challenge is keep going. Don't blindly continue. Learn from your mistakes. Review what you've done. But also remember that the difference between success and failure can be the 5%. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a completely rethinking of the whole model of mission. It just needs to be an adaptation that will sometimes fit more into the context that you're working in.